Welcome to the latest episode of LOVEUltras. I'm John Kynaston and this is episode 8. For this episode I wanted to talk about recce runs and the importance of them. When I first got into ultra running in 2007, doing the Highland Fling and then the West Highland Way, I wanted to make sure I got on the route. I had not really run or been on the West Highland Way before I entered the race, and so I felt it was important to train and to get to know the route and to be part of the route. And so I think right from the word go I realised that recce runs were important, and I really enjoyed getting out on the route and seeing the area before the race. And over the years, I've been doing ultras for over 10 years now, and a good number of the ultras that I've done recce runs. I've been on the route of the Lakeland 100 for the Hardmoors, particularly the second time I did it, the Cateran Trail, the Taurus Skiddaw, various races I've wanted to get on the route. It's not always possible. Sometimes I've did a race in France where it wasn't possible to go and recce the route beforehand, but where I can, I like to try and do that. Just this, not this weekend, the weekend before, I was in Anglesey and I did a recce run on the Ring of Fire route, which I'll be doing in September. So I think for me, doing recce runs are really important. It gives you a chance to get to know the route and to be part of it before the race. And I know other people like to keep the route for the race and don't really like to be on it, so it's a surprise when they get there. You won't be surprised to know that someone like myself who likes to prepare as well as I can, I really like to get on the route beforehand so that I know what's coming and what it's like. So I've thought of 5 reasons why I like doing recce runs. The first one is navigation. Now, a race like the West Highland Way, that's not as big an issue because it's marked, and in fact over the last few years I've noticed there's a lot more marker posts out now, so it's pretty difficult to get lost on the West Highland Way. And that will be true probably of the Cleveland Way, the Hardmoors races, and other races as well. This one in Anglesey, and there's marker posts. There's the Anglesey Coastal Path, and basically there's markers pretty well every junction. So navigation is not so vital on some of those races, but for others, and particularly the Lakeland 100, I would say it's vital to get on the route and be able to find your way. In the Lakeland 100, it's 105 miles from Kynaston, a big clockwise loop around the Lake District, and you're given a road book and a map. And if you've not recce'd and you have to find your way around, it's not marked, there's no marker posts, there's paths most of the way, but you have to work out which path you're on, following the map and the book. And so I think to do that race without recceing puts you at a big disadvantage. It means that you either have to follow people and they can make mistakes, or you have to stop quite regularly to make sure you know where you are and which path to take to be on the course. And so the very first time I did the Lakeland 100 in 2012, my good friend Dave Troman, who lives in Keswick, and myself, we did 3 weekends where we covered the whole route. And I decided to do some videos of it as well, and Dave and myself took video clips and then I put them together, and I did 15-minute videos of the whole route. And I did it primarily for myself because I knew I would only get down there once, and so I could watch them and get a feel of the route. But I think it's probably one of the best things I've done, and certainly I know people have appreciated being able to watch those and give them an idea of the route, whether they've done a recce themselves or not able to get on the course before the day. But that really helped me. And then the second time I did it in 2015, I again recce'd it. My friend Johnny Rowan was doing it that year, so we went down again and then we covered the whole route again over 2 or 3 weekends, and were able to find out. But having said that, I still made a mistake on each of the 2 races that I did, which cost me at least about half a mile, and just because I didn't concentrate. I knew the route, I'd recce'd it, but I still made a mistake. So it's not foolproof, but I think I would have made a lot more mistakes and lost a lot more time if I hadn't recce'd. So I think doing navigation for some courses more than others, and certainly on the Lakeland 100 I think it's pretty vital to get on the course as much as possible to be able to recce it. The second reason I put down is I really enjoy the recces, to be able to take my time and take photos and videos and be able to enjoy the route. We run through some amazing scenery. I suppose my three favourite races so far would be the West Highland Way, the Lakeland 100 and the Hardmoors. And all those areas are just beautiful to run through. And so the recces give me a chance to be able to take some photos and videos and enjoy the scenery. I'm not worried about time so much, so I can take my time and I can look around. Whereas on race day, I am a little bit more focused about what's going on. Again, down at Anglesey last weekend, I took my time, I was on my own, and could stop when I wanted to and take some photos and look around and get a feel of the scenery and the views and the different parts of the route. So that was great, and I think recces are great for that. Whereas, as I said, on race day I'm a little bit more focused, a lot more focused, blinkers on, and trying to get around the course as fast as I can. So I haven't quite got the same amount of time to be able to stop and look around and see what's happening. The third reason I put down that I really like doing recces is to work out my mini splits. Now, I'm someone who likes to I like to break down the whole route into 2-3 mile little mini splits. So if there's a 9 mile section between checkpoints, then I would have 3 mini splits of 3 miles each. If it's 12 miles, I would probably have 4. If it's 6 miles, I'd have 2. So basically every 2 to 3 miles, I break it down. And I use my recces to be able to do that, to be able to work out where I want my little mini splits. So whether it's a gate or a post or a road or a bench or whatever it is, I'll use that time to work out just where I want to go. I remember the first time I did the Hardmoors 110, I didn't get down on the route. I was hoping to, but it didn't quite work out family-wise. And so I remember getting to Saltburn after about 55 miles, and the next section that I had to do was a 12-mile section to Runswick Bay, and I had no idea what was coming up. I had no idea how hilly it was going to be, how many steps there was going to be. I started off and it was on the nice cliff top, and I thought, days like this would be great, but it didn't. And so I found that mentally really hard. It was going to take me 3 hours or so to run that 12 miles, and I didn't really have an idea of what it was going to be like. Whereas the next time I did it, I'd done I'd done races on the route, and so I had a bit more of an idea. And Dave Troll and myself did a 2-day run from Kildale to Filey. And I was able to work out all my mini splits. So by the time I did the race in 2014 as part of the Grand Slam, I knew exactly where my mini splits were, what was coming up, when it was coming up, and so I really felt as though I had a lot more idea of the route, and it meant I could break it down, and I had realistic times of what I was aiming for each of those little mini splits. So that's my third reason, to work out my mini splits and to be able to do that in a way which I find really helpful. The fourth reason I've put down is sort of help me with checkpoints, and I think this is again for me really helpful because when I do the recces I work out where the checkpoints are, and so I've got an idea of when they're coming. I remember doing West Highland Way one year, and I was running into Benglass. We were about 1.5 miles from the checkpoint, and I caught up with a runner who was saying, do you know when the checkpoint is? I thought it was half a mile ago. And because he didn't know the route that well, he was expecting the checkpoint half a mile before, and there was still another 1.5 miles to go. And I really felt sorry for him because I think he had finished his water off thinking the checkpoint was coming up, but there was still 2 miles to go, which was going to take him probably the best part of 25-30 minutes. And so mentally, again, it was really hard because he thought he was getting to the checkpoint, but it wasn't arriving. And if I hadn't have told him how far it was, he'd probably be going every corner, is this the checkpoint? Is this the checkpoint? And trying to find the way. And I think that's quite hard when you don't know where things are coming. So the recces, I like to be able to do that. When I went down to Anglesey last weekend, I knew where the checkpoints were on the part of the course that I ran. And so I had a good idea, right, there's this bit of a hill coming now, or there's this is a mile from here to the checkpoint, so I can start to finish off my water, knowing that I'll be able to replace it in the checkpoint. So just getting a real sense of where the checkpoints are, and when the terrain and the different parts before that is, again, I found really helpful. And then the final point I put down was the recce's give me a clear idea of the type of terrain and where the runnable bits are. I think if you look at a map and you see, well, there's a flat bit here, so I should be able to run that, but you just don't know what's coming and what's around. And I think, say, something like the West Highland Way, I've done that 6 times now, and I've done the Fling 8 times, and I've been on the route loads and loads of times. So I know exactly where the runnable bits are, I know where the hills are coming, so that's fine. But for other races, the recce runs have given me a real clear idea. I found, being in Anglesey last weekend, it's a fairly flat course in lots of ways. You know, there's lots of ups and downs around, but there's no massive hills. But it was good to be able to get a sense of where the runnable bits are. And one of the things I found quite surprising in Anglesey was the different types of beaches. You've got some beaches that the sand is quite soft, so even though it's a flat run, it's quite difficult to run because you're wading through, or you're going through this soft sand where it's hard to get any pace from. When the tide was out, it was fine because there was harder sand and I could run on those. So just to be aware that just because it's a beach, you're going to be able to run, not necessarily, because if it's high tide and there's only a little bit of soft sand left at the top to run on, it's quite slow going to be able to move through that sand. And the other thing I found quite interesting in Anglesey was the different types of stony beaches. There was, as far as I could see, there was 3 different types. There was very small compact stones that were fine to run on because it was compact and it was a good firm surface, and I could get a decent sort of jogging along those bits. Then there was the medium-sized stones, and they were quite hard to run on because it wasn't a good footfall. You were pushing side to side, and particularly as your legs get tired, I find it quite hard to run on that sort of terrain. So some of the beaches, and I found those quite hard, were the medium-sized stones and rocks that you had to be careful, and I ended up walking more than I was running on those beaches. And then the other types of stones was the big boulder ones, where basically you're climbing over them, and for me they're walkable. I can't really run on those. So just to get an idea of where the beaches are and how long they were. So if I came onto a medium-sized beach, then I knew, okay, it's only going to be 1/4 mile, so I'm going to try and run when I can, but it's not going to be forever. Whereas if I got on a beach where it's small stones, I know I can run that, so I can prepare for it. So the terrain, and also just getting an idea of where the hills are coming. My friend Andy joined me for the last few hours from Triada Bay on the Sunday. I did a 3-day recce. And we were coming up to South Stack, and Andy said, make sure you run this next mile or so, because after that it's a good long walk up to the lighthouse. And again, that was great advice, and now I've done that on the recce. I'll know that, okay, there's going to be a climb up to South Stack Lighthouse, so I want to try and run as much as I can before I get there, so that I'm not wasting too much time and taking advantage of where the flatter ground is. So the recce's give me a real good idea of the terrain and where I can run, where I should be running, where the hills are going to come, so I need to run before that, etc. Now I know it's not always possible to get on the route, and that's fine. And you know, if I can't, I'll try and do as much recceing in my mind and read about race reports and get a feel of the route, look at the maps. But there's nothing like actually being on the terrain. And I say, for these reasons, I just love to get out and to be on the route. And certainly when I've got a big race coming up, my main race, I really want to try and invest a bit of time so that I've been around the course. If I can't do the whole course, I tend to like to do the second half, because the first half you're fresh and you tend to be with people, so you're not going to make so many mistakes. Whereas the second half of the route, you tend to be on your own a bit more, and obviously you're getting tired, make mistakes. So to be able to know the route is really helpful. So when I went down to Anglesey, I went down for 3 days. I couldn't do 135 miles, so I did 13.5 miles on the Friday. I did an out and back section of 7 miles, and then I got the train and the bus out to Penman Point, and around 46 miles back to Rosnagar, back to the campsite, which is checkpoint 1 on day 3. And then the final day I went back to 4 Mile Bridge, where I'd got to on the Friday night, and ran the last 20 miles or so into Holyhead. So I've covered from Penman Point to the end, which is round about 75 miles. So the first day, 35 miles I won't have been on, and the first 25 miles or so of the second day. But I'm hoping that the experience I've got and the being on the rest of the routes give me an idea that, yeah, there are lots of marker posts about. It will be a mixture of scrambling and walking and running, and a mixture of terrain, so it won't be that much different to the rest of the route. But if I can't do the whole of a race, I would definitely prepare to do the second half, so that I've got a good idea of what it's like when I'm tired and probably on my own. So there's some thoughts about why I think going on recce runs before the race is really helpful.